In the tranquil morning glow at Whispering Pines Wildlife Sanctuary, 3 bobcat cubs were rescued from illegal wildlife trade. But tragically, their mother did not survive. The bobcat cubs placed in a wildlife sanctuary became withdrawn and refused to eat due to the trauma of losing their mother. When conventional methods fail and hope dwindles, a daring idea emerges. The sanctuary decided to introduce a gentle rescue dog named Daisy to act as a surrogate mother. Could a rescue dog, a new mother herself, be the answer to saving these wild lives? What began as a desperate attempt turned into a miraculous bond, defying all expectations and rewriting the rules of wildlife rehabilitation. This is a heartwarming story of an unlikely bond as Daisy the gentle mutt steps in to nurture the struggling bobcats. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning sun had barely crested the mountains surrounding Whispering Pines' wildlife sanctuary when Emily Johnson's phone rang. At 58, Emily had thought she'd seen everything in her 30 years of wildlife rehabilitation. But the panic in Ranger Mike's voice told her this day would be different. "We've got 3 bobcat kittens, Emily. Tiny things confiscated from some low life, trying to sell them at a truck stop outside of Tucson." His voice cracked. "We lost the mother. She was badly dehydrated and injured when they found her." Emily closed her eyes, her weathered hand gripping the phone tighter. Another casualty of the illegal exotic pet trade that had been flourishing in Arizona's border regions. "How old?" she asked, already calculating space requirements and formula needs in her head. "Can't be more than 4 weeks. They're refusing food, Emily. All 3 of them. The vet says they're failing fast." 30 minutes later, Emily stood in her small examination room, gazing down at 3 bundles of spotted fur, each small enough to fit in her palm. Their eyes were open, blue-gray, and unfocused, their tiny bodies trembling with fear and hunger. The smallest one, a female with a distinct white patch on her ear, made a pitiful mooing sound that seemed to echo through the sanctuary's quiet morning air. "Oh, little ones," Emily whispered, reaching gently to stroke the smallest kitten with one finger. It recoiled, hissing weakly. "I know you miss your mama. I'm so sorry." For 3 days, Emily tried everything she knew. Bottle feedings were refused. Syringe feedings resulted in stress so severe that the male kitten had a seizure. They huddled together in the corner of their heated enclosure, 3 diminishing specks of spotted fur, their eyes growing duller by the hour. On the morning of the 4th day, Emily sat in her office, head in her hands, the sanctuary's financial reports forgotten on her desk. The sanctuary was her life's work, built on land inherited from her grandfather in northern Arizona's high country. At nearly 60, the lines on her face told stories of countless rescues, rehabilitations, and the inevitable heartbreaks that came with the work. Her silvering hair was perpetually pulled back in a practical ponytail, her hands calloused from years of manual labor. Her granddaughter Lizzie, a wildlife biology student doing an internship at the sanctuary, knocked softly before entering. "I heard you didn't go to bed last night, Gran," she said, setting down a mug of coffee. At 22, Lizzie had her grandmother's determined green eyes and practical nature, but her approach to wildlife rehabilitation was influenced by newer research than what had been available in Emily's day. Emily sighed. "Those bobcat babies won't make it another day without nutrition. I've tried everything, Lizzie. Everything." Lizzie perched on the edge of the desk, her expression thoughtful. "Not everything, Gran. What about Daisy?" Emily looked up sharply. "Daisy? She's not even a year old herself. And she's a dog, Lizzie. A rescue mutt. A rescue mutt who just weaned a litter of puppies 3 weeks ago." Lizzie pointed out, her eyes lighting up with the idea. "She's still lactating as she's little, and she's the gentlest soul I've ever met." "It's too dangerous," Emily began, but Lizzie cut her off. "More dangerous than letting those kittens starve? You always told me that in rehabilitation, sometimes you have to try the unthinkable." Emily stared at her granddaughter, memories surfacing, echoes of her own mentor's words from decades ago. Sometimes nature needs a little help connecting dots it wouldn't connect on its own. That's what old Dr. Thompson had told her after they'd successfully paired an orphaned hawk chick with a surrogate father. "Get Daisy," Emily said finally. "But we do this carefully, Lizzie. Very carefully." Daisy had arrived at the sanctuary the previous winter, a pregnant stray, found half frozen in a drainage ditch during a rare snowstorm. She was a medium-sized dog of indeterminate breeding, maybe some golden retriever, some shepherd, and a mix of who knows what. Her soft golden fur and gentle brown eyes radiated a quiet patience. After giving birth in the sanctuary's small veterinary clinic, Daisy had proven to be an exceptional mother. All 6 puppies were quickly adopted by families in nearby Pine Creek. Daisy herself became a sanctuary favorite, often accompanying Emily on her rounds. Her calm presence seemed to soothe even the most distressed animals in their care. Emily had planned to find her a permanent home once she recovered from motherhood. But somehow, that plan kept getting postponed. They brought Daisy to a separate room next to where the Bobcat kittens were being kept. Emily sat on the floor, cradling the smallest kitten, the female with the white-patched ear, in a soft towel. The kitten's breathing was shallow, her tiny body cool despite the heated blanket. "Easy, Daisy," Emily murmured as Lizzie led the dog in. "Easy, girl." Daisy's nose twitched, her ears perked. She approached slowly, her tail wagging, in small, uncertain motions. When she reached Emily, she lowered her head and gently sniffed the bundle in the towel. The kitten stirred and gave a faint hiss, using the last of her strength. Emily held her breath, ready to pull the kitten away at the first sign of aggression. But what happened next would stay with her for the rest of her life. Daisy whined softly, a sound hauntingly similar to the one she used when searching for her own puppies. Then she laid down beside Emily, stretched her head toward the kitten, and began to lick it with slow, motherly strokes. The kitten, instead of recoiling as it had from human touch, went still. After a moment, it turned its tiny face toward the warmth of Daisy's fur. "Gran," Lizzie whispered, eyes wide. "Look." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she carefully set the kitten down closer to Daisy. The dog immediately curled around it, grooming the frail little creature as if it were her own. "Let's try the others," Emily said softly. One by one, they brought in the other 2 kittens. And with each, the same miracle unfolded. Daisy welcomed them, pulled them close, and cared for them with tender devotion. Within an hour, all 3 kittens were nestled against her belly. To Emily's astonishment, they began to nurse. "It's not ideal nutrition," Emily murmured, watching them suckle weakly. "We'll still need to supplement with formula if they'll take it. But this bond might save them." Lizzie gently squeezed her grandmother's shoulder. "Sometimes the medicine they need most is love. Gran, you taught me that." Over the next week, a transformation unfolded that defied all of Emily's professional expectations. Under Daisy's constant care, the Bobcat kittens began to thrive. They gained weight, their fur grew glossier, and their eyes sparkled with curiosity. Daisy never left their side. She groomed them, carried them gently by the scruff when they wandered, and gave low growls when their play got too rough. The sanctuary staff named them Patch, the female with the white ear, Scout, the larger male, and Rascal, the smaller male who loved to explore. Daisy seemed to recognize them by name, responding differently to each of their mews and behaviors. Emily documented everything: photos, videos, and meticulous notes. This unusual case of interspecies adoption was unlike anything she had seen in her long career. She knew it was both rare and potentially groundbreaking for wildlife rehabilitation. By the time the kittens were 8 weeks old, they were eating solid food, specialized formula mixed with small chunks of appropriate meat. They now spent their days playing independently, the Bobcat kittens still curled up against Daisy's warm body each night. Their play had taken on distinctly feline characteristics. Stalking, pouncing, and climbing had become their favorite activities. Daisy watched with maternal patience, occasionally joining in their games, but mostly acting as a calm, safe harbor. They returned to when tired or unsure. Their wild instincts are intact, Emily reported to Dr. Rivera, the sanctuary's consulting veterinarian, during one of his regular visits. They're developing hunting behaviors right on schedule, despite the unusual circumstances. Dr. Rivera, a man in his 40s who had devoted his career to wildlife medicine, nodded as he examined Scout. "Their physical development looks excellent. No signs of imprinting on humans, which is crucial. But I am concerned about their attachment to Daisy." These cats will eventually need to be released or placed in a proper facility. They can't stay with a dog forever. Emily had been avoiding that truth, though she knew he was right. The sanctuary's mission was rehabilitation with the goal of release whenever possible. For animals that couldn't be released, placement in accredited wildlife facilities was the next best step. Keeping wild animals as pets, even in a sanctuary, was against everything she believed in. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," she said, watching as Scout scrambled down from the exam table and raced back to Daisy, who waited patiently nearby. "For now, she's giving them what they need. Just remember," Dr. Rivera warned, "the longer they stay with her, the harder the separation will be for all of them." By the time the kittens were 4 months old, they had become the sanctuary's unofficial mascots. Volunteers watched them from a respectful distance, delighting in their playful pounces on fallen leaves or each other's tails. Daisy remained a constant presence, though her role had shifted from nurturing mother to tolerant playmate and protective guardian. Emily knew the time for a decision was coming. The bobcats were growing quickly. Their baby spots were fading, replaced by the sleek markings of adulthood. Their once blue eyes had turned the tawny gold of mature bobcats. Soon, they would naturally begin the journey toward independence, just as they would in the wild. "We've had interest from the Mountain Wildlife Preserve in Colorado," Lizzie told her one evening as they sat on the porch of Emily's cabin, watching the sunset cast golden light through the ponderosa pines. "They have an excellent bobcat habitat and a strong educational program. Best part? All three could stay together." Emily nodded slowly, her heart heavy. "It's a good option, better than most. But we need to start the separation process soon. Get them used to being without Daisy before they're transferred." The next day, they made their first attempt. While the bobcats were eating breakfast, Daisy was quietly moved to Emily's cabin, a quarter-mile from their enclosure. The response was immediate and distressing. As soon as they noticed Daisy was gone, all three bobcats began pacing frantically, emitting high-pitched calls that echoed across the sanctuary. They refused food, scratched at the doors, and huddled together in visible distress. But the most heartbreaking reaction came from Daisy herself. She howled mournfully and clawed at Emily's cabin door until her paws were raw. "This isn't working," Lizzie said, anxiety etched on her face after 4 hours of escalating stress. "Patch hasn't stopped calling since we took Daisy away." Emily stared through the observation window at the smallest bobcat, who sat alone in the center of the enclosure, head raised, calling again and again for her surrogate mother. "Bring Daisy back," Emily said quietly. "We'll try a more gradual approach." The reunion was emotional for everyone who witnessed it. Daisy burst into the enclosure and was instantly swarmed by the 3 jubilant bobcats, all purring loudly as they rubbed against her, checked her over, and finally curled up beside her in relieved exhaustion. Emily and Lizzie exchanged a silent, worried glance. The bond was even deeper than they had realized. For the next 2 weeks, they experimented with gradual separation, shorter periods apart, adjacent enclosures where the bobcats and Daisy could still see one another, slowly increasing the distance between them. Nothing worked. The kittens became visibly depressed if separated from Daisy for more than a short time. Daisy, too, showed clear signs of anxiety and sadness. "I've never seen anything like it," Emily admitted during a concerned phone call with Dr. Rivera. "It's as if they've forgotten they're different species," Emily said softly. "They've created their own family unit." "It's not unheard of in captive settings," Dr. Rivera replied thoughtfully. "There are documented cases of unusual interspecies bonds. The real question is, what's best for their long-term welfare?" The decision came to a head when representatives from the Mountain Wildlife Preserve arrived to evaluate the bobcats for potential transfer. Thomas Wilkins, the head zoologist, observed the unique family dynamic for an entire day before meeting with Emily in her office. "They're beautiful cats in excellent physical condition," he acknowledged, reviewing his notes. "But I have serious concerns about separating them from the dog. The stress could cause significant setbacks in their development." "So you won't take them?" Emily asked, her voice a mix of disappointment and relief. Wilkins stroked his beard, deep in thought. "I didn't say that. What if we took the dog, too?" Emily stared at him. "You can't be serious. She's not a wild animal. Daisy's a domestic dog. She should be in a home with people. Hear me out, Wilkins said, leaning forward. Our preserve has staff housing on site. One of our senior keepers, Maria, has been looking for a companion animal. What if Daisy lived with her, but continued supervised visits with the bobcats? Each day, as the cats mature, we can gradually reduce those visits, helping them develop independence without a traumatic separation. It was an unprecedented idea, but the more Emily considered it, the more sense it made. The preserve had resources, staff, and expertise that her small sanctuary simply didn't. Most importantly, the arrangement prioritized the animal's emotional and physical well-being. After extensive discussions, consultation with the sanctuary's board, and a long video call with Maria herself, Emily agreed to the unusual arrangement. The day of the transfer was bittersweet. Emily and Lizzie personally accompanied the animals to Colorado, riding in the specially equipped van with Daisy lying beside the crated bobcats. Sensing the importance of the moment, Daisy remained close, occasionally letting out soft whines to reassure her unusual family. The Mountain Wildlife Preserve was breathtaking, sprawling across the Colorado Rockies, with naturalistic enclosures and a dedicated team of professionals. Maria, their senior keeper, was a warm, capable woman in her 30s who immediately earned Emily's trust with her quiet confidence and deep compassion. They'll have 3 acres of forested habitat, Maria explained, walking them to the enclosure. It's designed to encourage natural behaviors while allowing for proper monitoring and care. With Daisy present, the bobcats explored their new environment more confidently. By sunset, they were already climbing logs and rock formations, while Daisy kept a watchful eye from the ground. When it came time for Daisy to leave for the night with Maria, Emily braced herself for another heartbreaking scene. But something had changed. Maybe it was the new surroundings or the bobcats' growing maturity. This time, though they called for Daisy a few times, the panic wasn't there. I think they understand this is different, Maria said softly. That this is home, and Daisy will be back. Over the next 6 months, Emily received regular updates and made occasional visits. The transition went better than anyone dared to hope. The bobcats thrived in their expansive habitat, growing into strong, healthy subadults. Daisy adapted beautifully to her new life with Maria, enjoying domestic comforts while still spending time each day with the bobcats. As the months passed, the nature of their bond evolved. They still greeted Daisy with enthusiasm, but they no longer clung to her. They spent more time roaming, climbing, and practicing their hunting skills. By their first birthday, they had become magnificent young adults, still bonded to Daisy, but no longer dependent on her. What happened 18 months later, however, was what truly astonished everyone involved. It began with a phone call from Maria. Scout is sick, Emily, she said, her voice tight with worry. Dr. Mendez thinks it's a bacterial infection, but he's not responding to treatment, and he's refusing food. Emily, now 60 and considering retirement, though not quite ready to let go of the sanctuary, felt her stomach sink. She had remained deeply invested in the bobcats' progress and still considered them among the most extraordinary cases of her career. How bad is it? She asked. Bad enough that we're very concerned, Maria admitted. He's withdrawn to the far corner of the quarantine area. Won't let anyone near him, not even me. Emily made her decision instantly. I'm coming, and bring Daisy to see him, right away. The drive to Colorado felt endless. By the time Emily arrived at the preserve, Scout had been ill for 3 days, growing weaker despite the medical team's best efforts. We can't get medication into him without sedation, Dr. Mendez explained as they hurried toward the veterinary building. And he's too weak for repeated sedation. He needs to eat and take oral antibiotics, but he's refusing everything. They found Maria waiting just outside the quarantine room, with Daisy sitting alertly at her side. The dog had aged gracefully into her dual role as companion to Maria and surrogate mother to the bobcats. Her muzzle now showed flecks of white, but her eyes remained sharp and full of gentle wisdom. She knows something's wrong, Maria said. She's been wanting to come here since Scout got sick. Through the observation window, Emily saw Scout curled in the corner of the room. His once glossy coat was dull, his sides heaving with the effort of each breath. He looked smaller, somehow fragile in his illness. Let Daisy in, Emily said firmly. Let's see if she can reach him when we can't. They outfitted Daisy with a sturdy harness and leash for safety, then slowly opened the quarantine room door. Daisy stepped in cautiously, her nose twitching, ears forward with alert concern. She spotted Scout immediately and let out a soft, familiar whine. Scout raised his head slowly, his dull eyes locking onto Daisy. For a moment, he looked confused, as if the fog of illness had dimmed his memory. Then he made a soft sound. Not quite a meow, not quite a chuff. The same noise the bobcats had made as kittens when greeting their surrogate mother. With gentle resolve, Daisy crossed the room, ignoring the whispered cautions from the veterinary staff. She lay down beside Scout and began to gently groom his face and ears, just as she had when he was a frail, orphaned kitten. What happened next left the room in stunned silence. Scout, who had refused all food for days, allowed Dr. Mendez to approach, with a small bowl of broth laced with dissolved antibiotics. With Daisy by his side, offering a steady presence of comfort and familiarity, Scout slowly began to lap at the broth. "I'll be damned," Dr. Mendez murmured. Over the next 3 days, Daisy barely left Scout's side. She slept curled next to him, encouraged him to eat, and seemed to provide a strength that medicine alone couldn't offer. When Patch and Rascal were allowed brief visits with their brother, the scene brought tears to Emily's eyes. 3 grown bobcats and their canine mother, together again in a moment of need. Scout's recovery was slow but steady. By the end of the week, he was eating regularly and regaining his strength. The infection responded well to treatment, and his prognosis shifted from guarded to good. "It's remarkable," Dr. Mendez told Emily, watching Scout take his first tentative walk around the enclosure, with Daisy walking patiently beside him. "I've worked in wildlife medicine for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this relationship. Love transcends species," Emily said simply, reflecting on the many wonders she'd witnessed over her decades in wildlife rehabilitation. On the day Scout was cleared to return to the main habitat, Maria suggested something no one had ever attempted. "I think Daisy should go with him, just for today, to help him settle back in with his siblings." It was an unusual request, but given the circumstances, the preserve's director approved it. Under careful supervision, Daisy accompanied Scout to the enclosure where Patch and Rascal were waiting. Emily watched from the observation deck, holding her breath. What she saw would stay with her forever. As Scout and Daisy entered, all 3 bobcats immediately rushed forward in a quiet explosion of joy, purring, rubbing heads, and bumping shoulders. Then, in a moment so perfectly natural it felt choreographed, the 3 bobcats surrounded Daisy, each finding a place beside her, just as they had when they were kittens, for several minutes. The unusual family simply existed, wild and domestic, feline and canine, together in perfect harmony. A bond born of desperation and sustained by something that could only be called love. "This," Emily whispered to Lizzie, who had flown in the moment she'd heard about Scout's illness. "This is why I've done this work all these years, for moments like this. Moments that remind us healing sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms." In the years that followed, Daisy's relationship with her bobcat family continued to evolve. As they matured, they needed her constant presence less. But their bond never broke. They had begun as orphans. She had begun as a stray. But together, they had become something truly extraordinary. Daisy, growing older but still spry, continued her daily visits. No longer a mother, but now a cherished friend. And though her role had shifted, her presence remained just as vital to the bobcats' well-being. The sanctuary and the preserve eventually co-authored a paper on the extraordinary case, contributing valuable insights to the field of wildlife rehabilitation. Emily, who officially retired at 65, often shared the story during guest lectures to aspiring wildlife rehabilitators. "Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't in a syringe or a surgery," she would say, standing before a slideshow of images showing Daisy and her bobcat family through the years. "Sometimes it's in connection, in meeting a need so deep, so fundamental, that it transcends every boundary we believe exists between species." And on quiet evenings, when Emily returned to visit the preserve, to see the animals that had forever changed her understanding of what was possible, she would often find Daisy, now elderly but still devoted, sitting peacefully near the habitat fence. Close by, the three adult bobcats would lounge, calm and content, their bond with Daisy still strong, still family. The unthinkable, Emily would murmur to herself, remembering her initial hesitation when Lizzie first proposed the unlikely pairing. Sometimes the unthinkable turns out to be exactly what's needed. In the golden light of sunset, wild and domestic, rescued and rescuer. Family in the truest sense of the word, they remain together. A living testament to the healing power of love without boundaries.